The Timekeeper's Flame. A Driftwood Fables original. The candle was not supposed to burn. That was what the old woman said as she wrapped it in layers of linen, tied with a strip of indigo cloth, and placed it into the wooden box. She didn't meet Thomas's eyes as she did it, and he didn't ask why. She only said, "You'll know when to light it," and closed the lid with fingers trembling like dry leaves in winter. Thomas was 10 when she gave it to him. His grandmother. She died that same night, slipping away in her sleep like a quiet breath leaving the room. No funeral, just the wind carrying the scent of dried lavender and ash. The candle was placed in the attic, where dust gathered like time itself and memories clung to it like spider webs. Years passed. The box waited. Thomas grew. He became the sort of boy who asked questions, but not always out loud. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed the way the clock in the hallway ticked slightly faster when the moon was full. The way certain pages in books he hadn't read felt warm. He didn't forget the candle. But he didn't open the box either. Not until the night the storm came. The wind howled through the trees, bending their bones until they groaned. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. The house was swallowed in silence, broken only by the tick, tick, tick of the hallway clock, still keeping its strange rhythm. Thomas climbed the attic stairs with a flashlight in hand and a pull in his chest he couldn't explain. The box was still there. Dusty. Untouched. Waiting. He knelt before it and brushed away the dust with his sleeve. The cloth was faded now, more gray than indigo, and the knot had loosened over time. His hands shook, just slightly, as he untied it. Inside, wrapped in old linen, lay the candle. It was a strange thing, about the length of his forearm, made of wax so dark it looked like ink. Carved into its sides were faint symbols, some like stars, others like waves or branches. It smelled faintly of rain and something older, something like parchment left in a library that no longer existed. He ran his thumb along one of the symbols. It pulsed. Startled, Thomas dropped the candle onto the attic floor. It didn't roll. It didn't bounce. It just stopped. As if it had chosen the exact spot it wanted to rest. Thomas stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "What are you?" The wind rattled the house again. Lightning flashed through the attic window, illuminating the candle's strange markings. They glowed for a heartbeat. Then faded. Thomas's heart beat faster. He reached into his pocket for the matchbook he had brought, thinking he'd light a lantern. But now, he looked only at the candle. The match struck. The flame danced. He hesitated. Then he touched the fire to the wick. The candle lit instantly. The flame didn't flicker like a normal candle. It stood straight and tall, perfectly still, as if unaffected by the storm outside or the breath of the world. Its light was soft, not gold, but something deeper, a pale blue-white that shimmered faintly like moonlight on snow. Thomas felt the attic shift around him. Not violently, not like a lurch, but slowly. Like a great door creaking open in the dark. He blinked. And the attic was gone. He stood in a hallway, narrow, wooden, and lined with clocks of every size and shape. They ticked in perfect unison. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. The sound wasn't loud, but it filled everything, a living heartbeat of time. Thomas held the candle. Its flame burned just as steady as before. He took a step. The hallway echoed. Beneath his feet, the floor seemed impossibly old, yet unmarred. He turned his head to look behind him, but there was nothing. No door. No walls. Just clocks, stretching into the shadows. A voice spoke, not in his ears, but in his mind. "You have entered the flame's memory." Thomas stopped. "Who are you?" he asked aloud. No answer came. Only the ticking. He walked forward. Each step seemed to lengthen the hall, but also, somehow, bring him closer to something. A shape at the far end, a door? No. A mirror. He reached it. And in the reflection, he did not see himself. He saw a boy. Younger than he was now. Barefoot. Hair tousled. Standing beneath a tree that no longer existed. The candle sat in the boy's hand, burning the same pale flame. Then, flash. Another image. A woman in a robe of starlight, holding the candle as she whispered into a wind that blew in reverse. Around her, time crumbled like dry leaves. Cities rewound themselves. A sun set and rose and set again in a blink. Then, another. A battlefield. Smoke. A soldier, kneeling, planting the candle into the earth like a blade. Around him, the battle paused. Frozen in mid-motion. Arrows in the air. Men mid-fall. The candle pulsed, and time bent. Thomas gasped. The images stopped. The mirror darkened. The flame still burned. He turned and found himself no longer in the hallway, but standing at the base of a tree. The same one from the first vision. Its branches reached across a sky filled with stars that moved too quickly. Constellations danced, rearranged, disappeared. Thomas looked down at the candle. It whispered to him now, not in words, but in feeling. A pull. A question. A choice. Would he go forward? Or return? He glanced behind him. Nothing. Only the candle's flame reflected in his eyes. "I'll go," he said softly. The tree shimmered. And he stepped through it. Thomas stepped beneath the tree, and into a world between ticks. The sky above him shifted colors with each breath. One moment it was soft gold. The next, a deep violet. Then something not quite a color at all, but a feeling, nostalgia woven into twilight. He stood on a path made of overlapping time. Beneath his feet, stones glowed faintly, etched with spiraling runes that rearranged themselves as he walked. Grass swayed around him, though there was no wind. Shadows stretched in directions that defied the sun, and far ahead, a bell tolled, not once, but endlessly, echoing like memory in a canyon. He didn't know where he was. But the candle knew. It pulsed again, not with urgency, but with certainty. Thomas followed the path, heart steady. He passed places that felt almost familiar, a cottage shaped like the one from his childhood storybooks, a pond that reflected not the present but something he'd yet to see. An orchard where apples hung suspended in mid-fall, frozen in the moment between stem and earth. He approached a gate. It was made of ironwood, knotted and old, but not rusted. It stood ajar. Beside it, a figure waited. An old man. Hair white as frost, eyes sharp as dawn. He wore robes that shimmered like woven dusk, and in his hand, he held an hourglass with no sand. "You've come far," the man said, voice deep and dry. Thomas nodded. "Where am I?" The man smiled, faintly. "You're where time forgets, and remembers all the same." Thomas looked at the hourglass. "Is that broken?" "No," the man replied, turning it slowly in his hand. "It simply hasn't begun yet." He stepped aside, motioning toward the open gate. "Inside is the archive of moments," he said. "You may enter, but know this, every step forward writes a choice in ink. Not pencil." Thomas hesitated. Then stepped through. Beyond the gate was a corridor of light and shadow. Along its walls, memories bloomed like paintings. Not his own, but others. A woman saying goodbye on a rainy train platform. A boy teaching his younger sister how to skip stones. A dog sleeping beside a fireplace that no longer existed. Thomas walked slowly, candle in hand. Each scene flickered as he passed, reacting to him. Then one scene stopped him. It showed a boy standing at a gravestone, candle in hand. It was him. He moved closer. The gravestone bore a name he didn't recognize, Elias Thorne. But beneath it was etched a line. Flame bearer. Time binder. Gone, but never forgotten. A strange tightness gripped Thomas's chest. The candle's flame dimmed. And for the first time, he heard a whisper, clear and unmistakable. "Remember who you are becoming." He stepped back. The image vanished. The hall ahead was darker now. But the candle still burned. The corridor narrowed. Not with walls, but with weight. Every step Thomas took pressed against him. Not physically, but like he was walking deeper into himself. The candle in his hand flickered now and then, but never wavered. It was steady. Resolute. Older than him. Older than memory. He passed through an archway woven from roots. Beyond it, a circular chamber unfolded, walls lined with floating orbs of light. Some pulsed like heartbeats. Others dimmed as he drew near. Each one held a moment, some joyful, some bitter, some lost to time entirely. He realized what he was seeing. These were lives. Threads of time. Not in books, not in records, but in essence. Held here. The archive. At the center stood a pedestal of stone, smooth and warm to the touch. As Thomas approached, the candle's flame grew taller, casting soft light across the floor. Carvings revealed themselves, runes etched into the base, forming a spiral. He traced them with his fingers. They pulsed beneath his touch. From the shadows, a voice emerged. "You carry the flame." Thomas turned. A woman stepped into view, draped in robes like molten ink, her eyes glowing softly with mirrored light. She was neither young nor old, or perhaps both. "I'm trying to understand," he said. "You will," she answered. "In time." She stepped closer, her gaze on the candle. "Do you know why it burns?" He shook his head. Because memory demands it. She circled the pedestal, slow and deliberate. The timekeeper's flame is not just fire. It's a tether. A way of holding moments, so they are not lost in the winds of forgetting. Every bearer is chosen, though few ever light it. Why me? Thomas asked. The woman paused. Because you remembered it, she said. And remembering is the first act of time binding. He frowned. What does that mean? She studied him. You've seen it already, glimpses. You felt it. The way a hallway breathes different after a thought. The way old clocks speak without sound. The world is not bound to a single thread. It flows in rivers. And sometimes, a flame carves a new stream. Thomas stepped forward. So I can change the past. No, she said, gently. But you can anchor it. You can carry it. And if you listen, you may even understand it. The orbs around them flickered brighter. One drifted down to hover beside Thomas. Inside it, he saw himself again. But older. Eyes weathered. Hands calloused. Standing at the mouth of a cave with the candle, whispering goodbye. The orb pulsed, then faded. What was that? He asked quietly. One possible thread, she replied. The flame shows what may come. Not to frighten, but to prepare. Thomas looked down at the candle. It burned steadily. The woman gestured to the pedestal. You may place it now. The archive will accept it. Thomas hesitated, then set the candle into the spiral. The moment the candle touched the pedestal's center, the room responded. A deep hum filled the chamber, low, melodic, and ancient. The orbs surrounding Thomas began to rotate slowly, orbiting the pedestal like stars in a forgotten constellation. The flame, still quiet and pale, flickered once, then flared into a spiral of silver-blue light. Thomas staggered back. The woman did not move. Her robes drifted as though underwater, her face calm as still water. This is the memory cycle, she said. When the flame returns to its cradle, it opens the path to its origin. Thomas stared at the pedestal. The candle no longer looked like wax, it looked like light sculpted into form. The runes etched in the pedestal glowed now, forming a circle that pulsed gently. A passage opened behind the pedestal. No door. Just space, unraveling. The woman turned toward it. You must go alone. He swallowed hard. What's in there? Not a place, she said, stepping aside. A beginning. Thomas felt a tug, not on his body, but deep within. The same sensation he'd felt in the attic. A thread pulling him forward, soft but certain. He stepped toward the opening. With each step, the hum grew quieter. The air thinned, not painfully, but like silence deepening. The path was narrow, lined with images, like the orbs, but stretched into flowing murals. Each showed the candle, held by different hands, in different ages. A young woman lighting it beneath a sky filled with 3 moons. A bearded man placing it in a stone lantern as mountains burned around him. A child in a cavern, weeping beside it. So many bearers. So many threads. Thomas walked slowly. He passed a mural that showed a tower of glass standing above a city of trees. In the tower's highest room, a figure stood with the candle, whispering into a circle of mirrors. The image shimmered and shifted. He blinked. Suddenly he was no longer walking. He stood in that tower. The floor was smooth and cold beneath his feet. All around him, mirrors floated midair, slowly rotating, each showing scenes like open windows into time. The candle was in his hand again. He spun slowly, watching the scenes. In one, a mother sang to her newborn in a forest cottage. In another, a warrior dropped to one knee before an empty throne. In a third, a young girl sat at a well, tossing coins in and murmuring dreams. Then, he saw his grandmother. Younger. Standing in a dark field. Holding the same candle. Crying. Thomas stepped closer. The mirror rippled like water. He reached out. A voice stopped him. You must not enter memory uninvited. He turned. A figure stood at the edge of the tower, a man in a long coat stitched with starlight. His face was obscured by shadow, but his voice was clear. Even the flame cannot undo what was, he said. It can only carry the weight of what is remembered. Thomas lowered his hand. She was alone, he whispered. She was protecting you, the man replied. From what she could not forget. The mirror faded. Only the candle remained lit. Why me? Thomas asked again. Why am I here? The man paused. Because the timeline needed someone who would remember gently. The stars outside the tower began to drift, not falling, not fading, just changing places. The sky moved as though it were alive, breathing, shifting the ceiling of the world with quiet purpose. Thomas stood silently with the candle in hand, its flame unwavering in the vast stillness. The man in the coat of starlight stepped forward. His shadow stretched behind him, long and uncertain. "Every bearer," he said, "must decide whether they are the keeper or the giver." Thomas turned to face him. "What's the difference?" The man reached into his coat and drew out a tiny hourglass, empty. "A keeper remembers, carries the burden of memory so the world doesn't forget what it once was. A giver," he paused, offering Thomas the hourglass, "places memory where it's most needed. In the right hands. In the right moment." Thomas hesitated, then took the hourglass. It was weightless. But inside, something stirred. A single grain of sand shimmered into existence. The man nodded slowly. "Your first thread has begun." Suddenly, the mirrors around them rippled again. One, far larger than the rest, began to swell with light. In its depths, Thomas saw a city, a modern one. Familiar. His own. But the sky was red. The clocks on towers all spun backward. People hurried through streets unaware that time itself unraveled above their heads. Thomas stepped closer. "What's happening?" he asked. The man's face tightened. "That is what comes, if memory is lost. If threads are severed." The candle pulsed. Its light bent toward the mirror. Thomas understood. "I have to go there." The man in the starlit coat nodded once. "You carry the flame. You are the thread." The tower began to dissolve. Mirrors faded into mist. The hourglass in Thomas's hand pulsed with warmth, and the grain of sand inside began to fall. A sensation swept over him, not cold, not painful, just deep, like slipping into a river already in motion. The candle's flame grew taller, enveloping him completely in soft light. Then, darkness, silence, and a hum. Thomas opened his eyes. He stood in his own city. Cars, people, billboards. But no one saw him. He looked down. His body glowed faintly at the edges, unreal, half there. The candle in his hand burned brighter than ever. In the windows of nearby shops, clocks spun too fast. Lights flickered without rhythm. Time was out of tune. And no one noticed. Thomas moved through the street like a ghost. He passed a boy holding his mother's hand. An old man feeding birds. A busker playing violin with a rhythm that matched the ticking inside Thomas's chest. He paused. The candle whispered again, pointing toward a tower at the heart of the city. Not the tallest, but the oldest. A clock tower. Cracked. Forgotten. He walked there. Inside, dust coated everything. The stairs groaned as he climbed. At the top, a great mechanism lay rusted and silent. Beside it, an altar. Stone. Worn. Waiting. Thomas stepped forward. He placed the candle at its center. And the city paused. For a moment, just one, everything stopped. The wind froze mid-gust. A paper drifting through the air hung like it had forgotten how to fall. The traffic lights blinked, but no cars moved. The city inhaled. Thomas stood still, his hand resting beside the candle. Its flame stretched upward like a pillar of memory, no longer a quiet flicker, but a beacon. From this high place, its glow reached every corner of the city, through brick, metal, glass. Through hearts that had long forgotten how to listen. The rusted gears of the clock tower shuddered. Then turned. One tick. Then two. Then more, each click resonating like distant bells echoing down empty streets. Below, time stirred. The mother looked up from her phone and smiled at her son. The old man feeding birds paused, then wept silently for a name he hadn't remembered in years. The violinist struck a perfect note and looked at the sky, as if seeing it for the first time. The candle burned, not consuming itself, but radiating. Thomas didn't understand how he knew it, but he could feel the threads weaving back together. Some moments did not need to be changed, they needed only to be remembered. He turned back to the altar. There was something else now, resting beside the candle. A key. Old. Brass. Marked with the same runes carved into the candle. He picked it up. And the world blinked. The city was gone. He stood in a room without walls, without ceiling, without floor. Only stars. A tapestry of time, stretched in all directions. In front of him, an arched doorway formed from drifting constellations. Within it, a library. Endless. Towering shelves made of shadow and moonlight. Books floated between levels. Globes spun silently. Quills wrote without hands. And there, at the very center, stood a lectern, and a book. Not just any book. His book. The spine shimmered with mirrored threads. The cover was warm to the touch. As he stepped toward it, the candle reappeared, settling beside the lectern of its own accord. Thomas opened the book. Its pages were empty, but he heard them whispering. Not in fear. Not in confusion. But in anticipation. He looked at the key in his hand. And he understood. This place, this vast archive, was not the end of his journey. It was the beginning of his stewardship. The flame had brought him here. Not to remember only his story, but to keep all stories. He took a breath. And wrote. The quill wrote without hesitation. Not in ink, but in light, soft trails of memory etched onto pages that shimmered as each word appeared. Thomas didn't need to think about what to write. He only needed to remember. He remembered the attic. The storm. The candle. He remembered the hallway of clocks, the archive, the pedestal spiral, the man in the coat stitched with stars. He remembered the visions in the mirror, the orbs of floating memory, and his grandmother, young, alone, holding the flame with trembling hands. Each memory flowed into the page like water from an endless spring. The flame beside him burned softly now. Not dim, not fading, just content. As if it had done its part, and now rested in the glow of fulfilled purpose. Thomas turned the pages slowly. On each one, a memory formed. Not just his. Others. A girl in a world yet to be born, discovering a candle in the ruins of a forgotten temple. A boy on a distant island, guided by dreams to a tower buried beneath sand and sky. An old woman, lighting the candle one last time to say goodbye to the one she'd never stopped loving. All flame bearers. All threads. Woven now into the book of time. When the final page turned, there were no ends. Only beginnings. A hush settled over the archive. Then, the library doors opened behind him. Soft footsteps approached. A child stood there. Wide-eyed. Barefoot. Hair tousled. She stared at the candle with reverence, not fear. Thomas looked down at her, then back at the book. There was space for another story. Do you want to remember? He asked gently. The girl nodded. He handed her the key. She smiled. And vanished into the shelves, her footsteps leaving ripples in the floor like footsteps on a still pond. The candle flickered once. Then twice. Then, slowly, it dimmed. Thomas placed it gently back into its linen wrapping and closed the book. He stepped away from the lectern and felt no sadness. Only peace. The archive faded around him. The stars dimmed. And in that silence, he felt time settle into its rightful rhythm once more. Tick, tick, tick. When he awoke, he was in the attic. The box lay open beside him. The storm had passed. Sunlight poured through the window, warm and golden. The candle sat in his lap, its wick untouched. Thomas smiled. Because now, he knew. Some flames burned to illuminate a path. Others, to keep time itself from forgetting. And some, to light the way for those still to come.